When the noise finally died, the silence felt louder than the shouting ever had. The cameras left first, then the strangers, then the applause faded into a memory that felt borrowed. What remained was pain that woke Evan before dawn and a black horse who never truly slept. The ranch breathed differently after the crowds disappeared. Wind moved through the grass without witnesses. Sunlight spilled across the pasture like something unsure of itself. Evan walked with a limp that no longer healed. Each step reminding him of the night, he ran instead of falling. He told himself he was safe now, but safety felt unfamiliar, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. At night, the stallion paced the fence line, hooves whispering against dirt, head lifting at every sound. Coyotes, owls, nothing, everything. Evan watched from the porch, hand tight around his cane, realizing the truth too heavy to ignore. Neither of them knew how to stand down. They came quietly, veterans mostly, men and women with careful eyes and tired shoulders. They didn't ask many questions. They just stood near the pasture and breathed. The horse felt them before Evan did. His muscles tightened, his ears turned sharp. Then, slowly, something softened. He lowered his head. The tension drained in small, careful increments, like a held breath finally released. Evan noticed how the visitors followed without knowing it, how their shoulders dropped when the horse stilled, how silence stopped feeling dangerous. So Evan began teaching rest, the same way he'd learned survival. With patience, with routine, dusk grazing, no lights at night, no fences between trust and open ground. He sat in the grass and stayed until his body shook, until the pain passed or didn't. And one night, under a sky washed clean by rain, the stallion folded his legs and lay down fully in the open field. Not collapsing, choosing. Evan covered his mouth with his hand and cried into the dark. The land became a refuge. No signs, no rules, just space to breathe and time to heal. The horse decided when to stand close and when to wander off alone. Evan learned to let him. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the hills, Evan watched the stallion sleeping in the tall grass, chest rising slow and easy. No fence lines, no threats, no commands. The message arrived at dawn when the world was quiet enough to lie. One line, no name, just a warning that crawled under Evan's skin and refused to leave. They didn't shut it down. They just buried it deeper. The ranch was still wrapped in mist when Evan read it again, knuckles white around the phone. His shoulder ached in the cold, an old pain that flared whenever the past stirred. Across the pasture, the black stallion lifted his head, ears sharp, eyes cutting through the fog as if he'd heard the message too. Evan felt it then, the familiar tightening in his chest. The watch had returned. News followed fast and ugly. A video leaked of another animal tearing through a containment site miles away. Fast, precise, wrong. Officials stood behind podiums and smiled thinly, dismissing it all as rumor, misinformation, a broken man chasing ghosts. Evan watched their mouths move on a flickering screen and felt the weight of being called crazy settle back onto his shoulders like an old coat he never threw away. He found the second animal at the edge of a burned-out training ground, rain hissing against scorched earth. The creature was contained, shaking, eyes wild with unfinished orders. Evan didn't step closer. Neither did the stallion. Instead, the black horse exhaled, a low, steady breath. The other animal stilled. Not fear. Recognition. Something passed between them that had nothing to do with dominance. Evan understood then. They hadn't just been trained the same way. They had survived the same hell. The truth came in fragments. Old handlers with haunted eyes. Documents that smelled like dust and guilt. Lists that ended with the same word over and over. Disposed. Evan's hands shook as he gathered it all, knowing what exposure costs, knowing silence costs more. When he released everything, the world didn't explode. It paused. Then it turned. Cameras stopped laughing. Questions sharpened. The program collapsed under light it was never meant to survive. The second animal was freed, released into protected land where commands could no longer reach it. That night, Evan burned the last notes, codes, phrases, words meant to break spirits. Flames curled upward, carrying secrets into the dark. The stallion stood beside him, calm, unhidden, visible at last. Evan watched the ashes drift away and felt something uncoil inside his chest. Freedom, he realized, wasn't escape. It was truth spoken aloud. Evan knew his body was failing before the doctors said it out loud. It showed in the way mornings took longer, in how pain settled deeper instead of fading, in the silence between heartbeats when he stood too fast. The land was still green, still wide, but he felt himself shrinking inside it. The horse knew first. He stayed close now, closer than before, shadowing Evan from porch to pasture, stopping when Evan stopped. At night, when Evan coughed awake, the stallion was already there, breath warm against the door, ears tilted toward the smallest sound. Evan rested his hand on the horse's neck and felt the truth pulse beneath his palm. This was not fear. This was loyalty. And it terrified him. What happens when I'm gone? The question followed Evan like a second limp. He watched the horse graze, strong and watchful, and felt guilt tighten in his chest. He had taken this animal out of war. He could not leave him abandoned again. So Evan began the final lesson. Not commands. Not signals carved into muscle. Choice. He opened gates and stepped back. He let the horse decide when to follow, when to turn away. Then he brought the young veteran to the land. A quiet man with careful hands and eyes that knew loss. The stallion stiffened immediately, body angled, ready to block. Days passed like that. Distance. Tension. Evan waited, saying little, trusting time more than force. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the field, Evan faltered and dropped to one knee. Before he could rise, the horse stepped aside, not toward Evan, but toward the young man. Just one step, then another. The young man froze, breath caught, as the stallion lowered his head and stood beside him. Evan smiled through the ache. The lesson had taken root. Evan passed quietly on a night washed clean by rain. No alarms, no struggle, just a final breath and the soft creak of the house settling. The horse stood at the door until morning, unmoving, a sentinel carved from shadow and muscle. At dawn, he turned from the house and walked to the gate. The young veteran followed without being called. The gate opened. In time, the land filled with footsteps again. Healing ones. The horse led them across open ground, calm and sure. Inside the house, Evan's cane hung by the door, untouched, no longer needed. Loyalty, Evan had learned, does not end. It carries forward.